Daredevil DLC seems to be on the cards for Spider-Man 2. People might have already seen that the Nelson and Murdoch sign that you can go find the Nelson and Murdoch building in New York inside Spider-Man 2. That sign had been removed when people were exploring the area in the first week or so after Spider-Man 2 launched. However, the sign's now been restored. Whether that was a texture pack or whatever is one thing, but creative director Brian Intihar did tweet saying, oh well, they must have paid their rent. And then more recently, there was a listening party live stream for the Spider-Man 2 soundtrack, and Brian Intihar ends the stream by saying, where is Daredevil? It was following up on a conversation that was happening at the time, maybe something in the live chat, but the stream the clip that's being shared now, the bit that the stream ends on, is him saying, where is Daredevil? As if it's a perfect segue into. It's like, dude must know what he's doing, and it makes sense. I mean, you know way more about the comic lore and the universe and stuff that I do, but it seems like Daredevil makes sense to do a DLC with.
I mean, Daredevil's my favorite Marvel character of all time. The most storied Marvel character in terms of you look at the character in the comics history. He had the most legendary runs from like Frank Miller, Ann Nocenti, Brian Bendis, Ed Brubaker, Mark Waid, more recently Chip Zdarsky. Just a brilliant character who would enrich what Insomniac have here. The one thing that I am slightly kind of confused by in regards to this, so it wasn't present when I was playing the Spider-Man 2 for review. I went looking for it again because I'm a Daredevil obsessive, and it wasn't there, like you mentioned. And it was raised in an interview with IGN that they hadn't seen it there, and Brian Intihar said, oh, stay tuned.
Yes.
And I don't know whether this is him just being playful over the fact that they forgot to put it in, and that he's joking about, oh, we didn't put it in,
right,
now we got to put it back in, and I guess they must have paid their rent or whatever, and everyone's taking this a little bit too far. But this, together with the hand tease, or what is potentially the hand tease, the secret room that people have found, the big red flag outside. You can kind of see the symbol of the Vishanti as well from Doctor Strange there, so it's kind of curious as to whether or not this thing is a hand reference, which is a ninja organization in Marvel Comics, or whether it is something to do with Doctor Strange. It's completely unclear at this moment in time. I would like some clarification soon, so my emotions can stop being played with. But yeah, I mean, if he is being very playful with it, Mr. Intihar,
yes.
So I do hope that he isn't working everyone up for nothing, because Daredevil is a beloved character. He and Spidey go way back. My first introduction to Daredevil was through the 90s Spider-Man cartoon, where they help out. But yeah, there were several teasers, and they mentioned as well that when Sandman is being when you've collected all the different pieces of him, I think Miles mentions, is it the Sandman one where Miles is like, oh, Peter has some lawyer friends who could maybe help or something?
Yes. Yeah.
So, you know, I feel like maybe there is going to be something. I would very much hope so, because again, Daredevil fanatic, and I've been dying for some more. One of my big criticisms on the game was that it didn't feel like Marvel-y enough. It felt just like we were in a New York cardboard sandbox at times. You needed to make more superhero-y stuff in there. And Daredevil is a very, very easy way of making the world feel more lived in and bigger.
I'm curious what Insomniac's overall agency is going forward, like their sort of role, because they're kind of becoming the Marvel studio. And it's like, we know they're doing Wolverine next, and it was like, there's a Wolverine costume you can get in Spidey 2, and it's just a weird thing. I'm just like, are they building towards doing a Daredevil game? And is there crossover between like some of the tech, some of the physics engine stuff that's already there, in terms of, obviously Daredevil can swing, but nowhere near as fast or propulsively as Spidey, but it's one of those things where like, does a Daredevil game then make sense? You have all the New York assets already there.
That's what I was going to say. I feel like you have this New York sandbox. It's very easy to plug heroes into that. And I feel like, for me, a Daredevil game would make much more sense as like a Sifu style experience, where you're basically put in enclosed areas and you're using Daredevil's martial arts to do things. I don't think he works quite as well as Spider-Man does as an open world patrolling hero, because he's basically micromanaging the crap out of, 6 blocks in New York in Hell's Kitchen. So he goes beyond that as well, but Hell's Kitchen is his main focus. I think you benefit more from a story linear kind of game for that. But yeah, I think at the same time, if you have this open world sandbox and you can plug in different Marvel heroes, it would make, like Lego Dimensions had. I'm not saying that you should have like Toys to Life stuff in like Marvel Spider-Man 2, but I think Insomniac, so there's got to be some conversation there about like, what if we just make Marvel, like Marvel's game or something, like Marvel Sandbox, whatever, come up with a better name than that. I'm not a name guy. And then you have it where you have the open world, you have the characters, and then you have different short narrative experiences where you play as the character, you get open world traversal and their own DLC story to go in with it. that would maybe make a lot of sense. I could see them doing something like that.
Yeah, I would take that as long as the gameplay side of things
Yes.
gets shaken up. Like, it's one of my biggest criticisms of Spidey 2 is how much it still feels like DLC, or it still feels like a continuation of what went before in a fine enough way. But I think if you were going to switch over to Daredevil, I'd want him to have a different feel to that combat. Like you said, he mentioned Sifu. If they can have weightier, more riskier combat where you have to nail every hit kind of thing, or you have to do something that feels like you're mastering a close quarters amount of enemies or something, that would be cool. But yeah, I mean, assumedly Spidey 2 will get DLC. I think they're yet to confirm anything, but Spider-Man 1 got 3 packs by the end, so why not?
Well, I mean, I feel like, again, spoilers if you haven't played Marvel Spidey 2, this is like a kind of a big spoiler for one of the side quests, but basically at the end of the what are they called? The flame cult.
Yes,
They call it the flame. It ends with a tease of Carnage. So I think that is definitely a DLC tease. I don't think that's a sequel tease. I think the sequel tease we get comes at the very end of the game with the post-credit stuff and what we get with Norman and Otto and stuff. So yeah, I feel like Carnage DLC is a thing. It's a great way to make, because obviously Peter has all his anti-venom abilities as well, as you can plug those back into stuff. Yeah, curious to see how that pans out, because I mostly enjoyed the City That Never Sleeps DLC for the first Spidey game, even if I thought that new enemies they added were incredibly frustrating to deal with.
Yeah, they doubled down on, like, we're going to do this one move, and if you're not hitting this one button, you are done. Yeah. And then just spam them over and over again. We can throw in another news item, which is Insomniac confirming that going forward, their main Spider-Man is going to be Miles Morales. And this is in an interview with Gizmodo. They said that it always felt very natural, the idea that they all thought that collectively it would happen. To them, it was a great deal of evolution for Miles. At the beginning of the game, we see him struggling to figure out what he wants to do with his life, but by the end, we have Miles carrying the burden of saving the city, and also carrying Pete when Pete wasn't strong enough to carry himself at various points. I mentioned this because, as a talking point anyway, but like alongside that idea of like, do they do a Carnage DLC, maybe a Daredevil DLC, that rounds off what the Spider-Man 2 chunk is, and then Spidey 3, assumedly would involve Silk or some of the characters that I mentioned towards the end of the main story, or hinted at anyway. And then Spider-Man 3 is its own separate thing that is like a Miles-fronted game. Like, I guess, what do you think of the way that's all planned out? Like, it's kind of crazy.
So I like this. As a big Miles Morales fan, I'm a huge fan of this, because the Ultimate Comic series is one of my favorite, like, Marvel comics of all time. The stuff when Bendis introduced Miles was fantastically well done, and I like the idea of having Silk as I think Silk is maybe a bit of a left field kind of thing that we didn't really see coming. But I like the idea of Insomniac maybe reinventing that character slightly, and I think people may be getting carried away with the suggestion that Miles is going to be the Spider-Man,
like the only playable,
because the ending of Marvel Spider-Man 2, it's not Peter retiring. He says he's taking a bit of a break, and he's still got anti-venom. Carnage is still a thing. We know that Norman and Otto primarily want to kill Peter Parker. They want to kill the Spider-Man that has messed up or whatever. Miles is probably... my prediction for Spider-Man 3 is that you will play most of it as Miles, and Silk will come in, and then maybe a third act inclusion of Peter. Or maybe they even kill Peter off. I don't know. I feel like there's plenty of places you could go with this. I like the idea of Miles being the new hero going forward, as long as he gets rid of that really bad costume, which is just terrible Adidas...
You mean the Adidas tie-in?
Yeah, product placement. Because at the end of the day, we've had 60-odd years of Peter Parker stories. What Insomniac have done with the character here has been fantastic, but Miles definitely still needs to carve out his own mythos and mythology that's been going on over the last 10 years or so. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited for that. Give me more Miles-fronted stuff. I think, like, I don't know. Don't get carried away, because I feel like Peter is going to be a key part of the third Spider-Man game, because, again, all the emotional grounding with the villains are tied with Peter specifically. But yeah, I have no problem with him being a supporting player if that's how they're going to play it. Again, just change the goddamn costume, because it is so bad.
No, I think for me it's I love the boldness that comes with this new universe, like this new sort of timeline, this new version of the character. Like, I love the way Spidey 1 ended, like the whole stuff with Aunt May and everything. And for me, Spidey 2, if anything, plays it quite safe in regards to this. It's a standard Venom story. That's how I felt it was. Obviously, you're swapping out who Venom is, but the beats of that story felt quite similar. So I like the idea of shaking things up, doing another Miles-fronted game. Like, I love the Miles game in itself. I've seen another thing that's being discussed just amongst fan forums and stuff, is was the idea of a Silk game as a go-between, because we had Spidey 1, then Miles Morales, then Spidey 2. Do you do Spider-Man Silk and then Spider-Man 3?
That won't happen.
Bring that all together.
Because we didn't even see Silk in this one. We didn't even like see that she hasn't even been introduced with powers. When we had the Miles Morales spin-off, we had the whole Miles had his fully rounded out arc in the first Marvel Spider-Man game leading into that. I don't really see them doing that unless they want to go for a full origin story game. They're literally like this, but I don't feel like you have Silk does not have the brand recognition that Miles did back in 2018 and 2019 or 2020. So I think you have to devote a whole bulk main core Spider-Man game to fleshing her out, and then if you want to maybe spin that out from there. I'm curious. I'm curious what were you saying about the Insomniac Marvel Studio thing as well. I think that's really interesting because, like, surely they will have their own things that they want to do away from Marvel, but it definitely seems like they're going into there. And I don't know how many Spider-Man games are they going to do, because I think the ending teaser 2, it kind of makes it seem as if 3 is going to be, I think they call it the final chapter or something. I feel like there was something, there was some deliberate play on words there about, like, you know, the final chapter. So maybe that's their Spider-Man trilogy done, and they move on to other things. But yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting time to be alive.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of fascinated by the wider view of how Sony has their claws in Spider-Man. Like, you've got all the Spider-Verse movies, and there's a Spider-Verse thing in Spider-Man 2. So it's like, okay, we got Miles Morales. We're pushing him quite a lot. Let's have a Miles-focused game. Let's go forward with Miles. And then we have the Craven movies coming out. So let's have Craven as the main villain in Spider-Man 2. And it's like, you can kind of look at the branding, the wide plan of how they're moving forward with everything. I think that's kind of an interesting angle on it, of what this means to Sony, because they've managed to get Spider-Man as a PlayStation character. Like, he's thought of as a PlayStation character in the gaming space anyway. And that's like a Herculean branding task in itself. But I think that's something that they'll never let go, or not want to let go. And so I don't think we're at that breaking point yet where Insomniac want to break away. It's not like a Neversoft Tony Hawk situation, or a core Tomb Raider situation where they're sick of making them every couple of years. But I wonder about that. I mean, when you look at Brian Intihar in the various interviews, at the minute he's bouncing off the walls, can't believe the opportunities he's getting. He loves comics and everything else, wants to do all these different games, and that's awesome. But yeah, I wonder how much more there is there for that passion before it's like, well, we need another one, and we need, put more stuff into this map. We're just doing another Spider-Man game.
Interesting as well. I'm very curious. I know we spent a lot of time on this topic, but I'm very curious to see how the gaming space continues with Insomniac with respect to Insomniac's Marvel games, given all the MCU fatigue that's going on at the minute. Are people fed up with superheroes, or are they just fed up with the MCU and the glut and the way the stories are being arranged and the content-y nature of it all? If Insomniac can preserve, like, a proper story-driven "this game should exist" kind of feeling, then maybe they're able to weather that storm and keep going. Obviously, Marvel Spider-Man 2 did amazingly financially well.
Oh yeah.
I'm curious to see how well that continues going forward, because I think even though we're all a bit, it's the same with Star Wars, isn't it? I feel like a lot of us are very tired of Star Wars and superheroes, but we still all turned out for Jedi Survivor, and we still all turned out for Marvel Spider-Man 2. So maybe there is an organicness to these stories that is going to ensure that Insomniac can keep the train going. I would personally love it if we got another Hulk game, man. Give Insomniac a Hulk Ultimate. Like, people are talking about, we want a Venom spin-off. Nah, let them do a Hulk game.
The thing is, that Venom sequence in Spidey 2 gave me Hulk vibes. Like, the way that you're jumping to other platforms and decimating dude. It's like, it's not that far off a Hulk.
Did you play Ultimate Spider-Man 2005?
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was very much in keeping with that. I mean, Hulk and Venom kind of play quite similarly in a way, I guess. I don't know. I want them to keep going with all these different experiences. I feel like, for as much as the MCU has, like, pigeonholed Marvel in a certain kind of story that needs to be told, I'm worried that Spider-Verse is doing the same thing with respect to the multiverse and how that's going into stuff. I hope that talented developers like Insomniac can look at this kind of heterogeneous universe and source material and go, okay, let's try and do something different. And it's kind of why I'm also excited for the Amy Hennig Captain America Black Panther World War II game, because that, again, tying into Marvel as the pulpiness of Marvel back in the 40s. Can we maybe go a bit more cosmic, like the Guardians of the Galaxy game? Can we maybe go a little bit more street level, like Wolverine or Daredevil? There's all sorts to go here.
The Guardians game is surprisingly incredible as well. Like, that has straight up Mass Effect vibes when you're walking around your spaceship talking to people, and all the different dialogue choices you get and everything. Like, I was really surprised by that Guardians game, and it's a weird thing because I'm massively fatigued by superhero stuff. Like, I haven't jumped on Invincible season 2 yet, because I just don't care about superhero stuff at the minute. But at the same time, Andor in the Star Wars space was so effing good that it made me care about that, and I was like, damn it, like you've got me back in again. So it's like if a story's good enough, or the writing's good enough, or whatever, the framing, etc., it can punch through. It's just that it needs to be like gold star essential
We're
stuff.
desperate for new stories to be told and not for characters to just be placed in their safest, most IP form ever. You know, that's the reason why Spider-Man has sucked in the comics the past like 5-10 years, is because in the mainstream mythos he has been stagnated as like an early 20-something who has no commitment to his relationships or whatever. I feel like with what Insomniac are doing, it's like, well, no, we're going to make him age, we're going to make him grow, we're going to make you connect to this character, like Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, Jack Kirby did back in the 60s, and Jerry Conway and John Romita as well, how they endeared yourself to the character because he literally went from being a high schooler through to, you know, getting married to Mary Jane. I think we need more of that, and it's nice that these mediums are providing a space for that to actually happen and push these characters forward.